In the quiet glow of his laptop, Brad sat, swallowed up by silence, watching a scene that seemed to shatter everything he knew. There, on the screen, was a woman with short, curly blonde hair, the kind of look his wife Marie always had. She was smiling, full of excitement, as she walked into a room with a younger, taller guy. This guy was all muscle and smiles, a clear head taller than Brad and just as solid, but leaner. As the two got closer, the guy took off his shirt, showing off a body that Brad couldn't help but notice was in pretty great shape. The sparks between them were obvious from the get-go. The woman, his Marie, didn't hold back, especially when her clothes started coming off, revealing the fancy lingerie set Brad remembered all too well. It was the same set Marie wore on their 25th anniversary, a night Brad had planned to be perfect, filled with dinner, dancing, and love at a fancy hotel. That night had been special, a celebration of their many years together, ending with them making love, wrapped up in each other. Brad had loved seeing Marie in that lingerie, thinking it suited her perfectly. Now, watching this video, those happy memories felt ruined. The video kept going, showing Marie and this guy getting more and more into each other. It was a side of Marie Brad had never seen before. Wild, eager, completely different from the gentle, loving wife he knew. They had always been about soft, caring love, the kind that left them feeling close and happy. But what he was seeing now was the complete opposite. It was raw and intense, nothing like the love they shared. Seeing Marie with someone else, in a way he never thought possible, hit Brad hard. It was like he didn't even know her. They had shared a life, a bed, a love that he thought was deep and unshakable. But this video showed him a whole other side of Marie, a passion and desire he couldn't satisfy. It was a tough pill to swallow, realizing that their love, as he knew it, was gone. Brad was left to face the wreckage of his marriage, feeling lost and alone in the aftermath. He focused hard on the video and barely noticed his phone beep, showing he got a text from his wife. He stopped the awful video to read the message, then went straight to the store from work. His wife asked if he wanted something special for dinner. He replied, "Nothing special. See you when you get home." He planned to add "love you" at the end, but seeing her betray him made his heart cold. She texted back, "Okay, see you at home. Love you, baby." "Yeah, right," he muttered bitterly. He checked the time and knew she'd be home in about an hour. Marie is 52 years old. She works as an administration assistant a few miles away at the admissions department of the local community college. She's worked there for a few years after leaving her previous job as a secretary for a small company. She goes to work later than Brad and gets off later, so he's usually home before her if he doesn't have to work overtime. Brad Kindelson is a 55-year-old financial analyst, working at his firm for the past dozen years. His job is stressful at times. Some of the firm's customers are well-off businessmen, understandably concerned about their finances. So he devotes all his energy and concentration to his clients during working hours. He also has to travel occasionally, which was why he finally found out about his wife's cheating. A few months ago, he finished one of his required business trips to a nearby city. He usually took a plane but drove this time instead. It was close enough from home and took about the same amount of time. On the way home, he decided on the spur of the moment to stop by the old cabin he and Marie owned to check on it. It was a small, rustic, one-bedroom vacation cabin in the hills, 45 minutes from their house. It had electricity, a working well, a small propane stove for cooking, and a fireplace for heat. Other than that, it lacked any other amenities. Her late father used to own it, and her mother left it to Marie after she died. Since they acquired it, they only stayed there 3 times in 10 years. The last was 2 years ago when they stayed there for a quiet weekend of solitude. Since they almost never used it, Brad was thinking about selling it. He knew they wouldn't get much. It's not in the best condition, but was located near a scenic lake on 1 acre of land in a small cluster of similar cabins. Unfortunately, there was no security, just a chain-link fence along the dirt road leading to the cabins. A retired farmer owned the land and built the cabins, selling them to fund his retirement. Brad wanted to check if anyone was squatting or had broken in. As he drove up the dirt road, he wondered who would want such a remote cabin. Maybe hunters or an elderly couple like them for a weekend getaway? They kept a key under a specific rock in the garden, which Brad used for entry. Inside, he checked the water and found the well was working. In the bathroom, he noticed the shower curtain wasn't pushed all the way, unlike when they were last there. There were faint soap stains around the sink, which he remembered cleaning. Brad realized someone must have been there since he and Marie visited 2 years ago. Nothing was broken or missing, but chairs were moved in the kitchen and minor changes were in the bedroom. He checked around but didn't see anything else unusual. There were faint tire tracks in the driveway, but he couldn't tell how old they were. Other cabins were empty, and it seemed like nobody had visited in years except for the tire tracks. After checking for half an hour, Brad wondered what to make of it. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Did Marie come here and forget to tell him? It was hard to believe, but he had to consider it. If a squatter broke in, why wasn't anything damaged or out of place? If troublemakers had come, they would have left a mess and not bothered to put things back where they belong. The shower curtain was almost in place, just not completely pushed aside. Whoever was there took care to make it seem like nobody had been there. It was only because Brad was meticulous that he noticed the difference. For some reason, he chose not to tell Marie. He wasn't usually suspicious, but something felt off. He trusted his wife. They'd been together for years. But this was too strange to ignore the possibility that she knew something and wasn't telling him. He didn't want to confront her yet, not wanting to sound like he didn't trust her. Since it was just a feeling, he needed more proof before asking her about it. After that odd visit, Brad bought a pricey set of surveillance cameras. He installed them discreetly, one by the porch, one in the living room overlooking the kitchen, and the last in the bedroom, angled to see into the bathroom if the door was open. Without telling Marie, he started driving to the cabin every weekend to check the recordings. Since it only took 2 hours round trip, he could easily make excuses for his absence. In fact, Marie was away more than he was, shopping or visiting friends or spending time at the health spa she joined last year. She had lost weight and toned up, looking good for her age. The cameras were motion activated, so the first 2 times he found nothing recorded. He was starting to think it was a waste of time. But on the third visit, there was footage. He hurriedly downloaded it and watched at the kitchen table before heading home. His heart sank when he saw his older, bottle-blonde wife and a much younger guy step out of a sports car in front of the cabin. They were smiling and laughing like old pals as they walked up to the door holding hands. Just like before, Marie got the key from under the rock and let them in. Brad's hands were clenched as he watched them enter the living room. He grabbed his wife as soon as the door closed, and they started kissing passionately. It was more proof of his wife's infidelity. That was the first time Brad saw evidence of her cheating. Watching her act like that made him sick to his stomach. He didn't throw up, but he was disgusted and upset. He sat there in shock for a while before leaving the cabin, feeling completely bewildered. He made sure everything was as he found it, so Marie wouldn't know he'd been there. He had every reason to believe this wasn't the first time she used the cabin for affairs, and he suspected it wouldn't be the last. He checked the cameras to make sure they were still working and left feeling heartbroken. He wanted nothing more than to go home, confront his wife, confront her lover, and destroy everything. During the drive home, he managed to calm down enough to think clearly. Until an hour ago, he had no idea she was cheating. He loved her deeply and always thought she felt the same about him. They often talked about cheaters, and Brad believed she shared his views on infidelity. Now he knew he was wrong. He needed more information before losing control. His late father always advised him not to react without thinking things through, but his dad never faced a situation like this. How could she betray him like this? Throughout the journey home, Brad searched desperately for any glimmer of hope for his falling apart marriage. With each passing mile, troubling questions crowded his thoughts. Was this the only time she cheated? The way she acted with that guy made it seem unlikely. But what if it was? Since the recording had no sound, he didn't know what they talked about. Did he really want to end a 25-year marriage over one mistake in judgment? Until an hour ago, she had been a wonderful wife, or so he believed. Despite hating her, he still loved her deeply, which made her betrayal sting even more. One question hit him hard. If he divorced her, how could he ever find someone else? At 55, he was overweight, not wealthy, and not particularly attractive. While he wasn't bad looking for his age, it was evident that his bedroom skills weren't enough to keep his wife faithful. Meanwhile, Marie still attracted guys, as evidenced by the disturbing video. She was still attractive for her age, and there were likely many men interested in her. But what about him? At 55, he wasn't a catch anymore. The chances of finding someone like her again were slim. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, he finally reached home. Fortunately, Marie wasn't there. She had left a note on the table saying she'd be out shopping and wouldn't return until dinner. Brad tore up the note in frustration, bitterly wondering if she was off cheating with that guy again. That was more than a month ago. Since then, he discovered 2 more videos of her having sex at the cabin, including the latest one where she was being intimate on the sofa. It was clear that it wasn't a one-time mistake. as all three videos showed her with the same man. Once Brad snagged that first recording of his dame's fling, he played it cool. Took a page out of the playbook, acting like nothing was amiss with his wandering misses. But deep down, he was burning up, boiling over with suspicions. So he started paying attention, real close attention. Every stitch of her clothes, every move she made, and every place she went, he clocked it. No private dicks for Brad, nah. He wanted to keep his cards close. Just slipped a GPS tracker into Marie's ride, and bingo, he's got her mapped out on his computer screen like a hawk, eyeing its prey. Her routine seemed squeaky clean, except for the occasional shopping spree and her gym visits. Brad played hooky a few times, tailed her after work. Home, sweet home, was her usual stop, unless it was a workout day. But it was that fancy health spa where she clocked in the most hours outside the homestead. Months rolled by, and Brad noticed something fishy. Marie was pumping iron like never before. She'd always been a looker, no doubt about it, but now she was tighter than a drum, all toned up and slimmed down. Brad played the supportive hubby, cheering her on as she signed up for workout classes at the spa. He even applauded her progress, blind fool that he was. Then it hit him like a ton of bricks. That health spa wasn't just a gym, it was her rendezvous spot. The man in the video clearly spent a lot of time at the gym, evident from his muscular physique. Brad decided to tail his wife from work and got there before she did. He observed her entering and even saw her working out because the building had large windows at the front and good lighting. He parked his car discreetly at a distance and watched her interacting with the staff. It didn't take long to notice her friendliness with a particular young man who had short, dark hair and a strong build. Brad took some pictures with his digital camera. He waited for her to leave and observed as she walked out the front door with the young man. They exchanged a few words by her car, having a friendly conversation that appeared normal. They seemed at ease chatting, and whatever the guy said made Marie laugh. She even placed her hand on his arm as they talked. As she was about to leave, he put his arm around her waist and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. Marie smiled up at him affectionately. Brad drove home, locked himself in his office, and looked up the guy on the Spaz website. His name was Oscar Pifford, 28 years old, working as a personal trainer. Over the next few days, Brad spent time parked in front of the spa. He observed Oscar flirting with Marie when she arrived, giving her a lot of attention during her workouts, and escorting her to her car when she left. It was clear they were very familiar with each other. Oscar seemed to flirt with many women and was likely a playboy. Despite the age gap, Marie was an attractive, mature woman. He probably flirted with her during her workouts, found her receptive, and pursued her. Once they were involved, it was likely Marie's idea to use the cabin as their secret rendezvous spot. Brad begrudgingly acknowledged his wife's cunning choice. Using their house for her affair was risky because of nosy neighbors. Brad was there often enough that they might leave evidence of their cheating. A motel would leave a paper trail, and if it was local, someone might see them and tell her husband. However, the cabin was secluded, free, and far from home. Marie knew Brad never went there. As long as she kept it clean, Brad would never find out about her affair. It was the perfect place for cheating. If he hadn't checked on the place after his trip, he still wouldn't know about her betrayal. Despite finding the first video a week ago, Brad managed to hide his bitterness. It was hard not to confront her, but he left the house when he felt angry. He wanted to give himself time to plan. After watching the latest video of Marie with her lover, he was furious. He kept his cool, even though she seemed to enjoy cheating. Even if she ended it, Brad didn't think he could stay with her. He couldn't understand why she treated him with such disrespect. No matter how much she apologized, Brad couldn't forgive her. Hiding his knowledge gave him time to prepare. As a numbers guy, he knew how to safeguard his assets in case of a split. With a hefty stash in the bank, he figured she wouldn't be walking away with half of squat. He harbored fantasies of leaving her destitute, but reality slapped him back. Ruining her and roughing up her lover danced in his mind, but he wasn't cut from that cloth. Violence? Nah, that would be playing right into the cops' hands, and he wasn't keen on cozying up to a jail cell. Sure, he was seething, but he wasn't some gumshoe or a mobster with connections. Just a regular Joe trying to keep his family ship from sinking. So he plotted his payback, meticulously, all the while gearing up for the inevitable divorce. It wasn't a rosy outlook, but what choice did he have? The sound of her wheels in the garage put his gut in a vice grip. He fought to keep the rage from surfacing, maintaining his facade of ignorance. Once upon a time, her return home was the highlight of his day, but now it was a bitter pill to swallow. She waltzed into the kitchen, looking sharp as ever in her office getup. A picture of sophistication, with her permed hair and a smile that once made his heart flutter. "Hey, honey," she chirped, groceries in tow. "How's it hanging?" "Hey, okay," he replied with a tight smile. "Starving, though. Got some steaks. Fire up the grill. I'll toss together a salad." "Sounds like a plan," she agreed, heading for the kitchen, unaware of the storm brewing beneath her husband's calm exterior. He put on a calm expression and went out to the deck to handle the grill. It was hard to act normal after watching her latest cheating video. He used to enjoy when she came home so they could eat, share their day, and spend the evening together. Now he didn't see her in a positive light, and her presence upset him. He no longer saw her as his wife, just an aging woman involved with a younger lover. Despite this, he couldn't help but admire her acting skills. After treating him terribly, Marie came home each day acting cheerful and loving. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was the same faithful wife she always was. Of course, they were both pretending, but she was much better at it. For him, pretending was almost unbearable. Several times in the past few weeks, he almost let his anger out on her, but he managed to hold back. It was fascinating how she could keep her two lives separate. On one hand, she was cheating on him regularly, but at home she acted like a normal, faithful wife. Brad couldn't see any signs of her affair, no indication that she was sleeping with another man regularly. What was even more confusing was that she was offering him regular sex now. Before her affair, he had to practically beg for it. Now she was initiating it, even encouraging him in the morning. Brad knew it was just pity sex to ease her guilt, but after seeing her with her lover, he doubted she felt guilty anymore. He used to think she was honest, but now she could lie convincingly, hiding her affair without any sign of deceit. After Brad finished grilling the steaks, they dug in without much chatter. Small talk floated around like a ghost at a seance. But mostly dinner was a silent ordeal. Marie, fidgety as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs, barely touched her food, her eyes darting over to Brad like she was trying to read his mind. Brad, sensing the tension, kept his trap shut tight. One wrong word could crack his poker face wide open. Usually, they'd cap off their meal with some Java and a sweet treat. Not tonight. Brad wolfed down his food, itching to bolt. He cleared the table in record time, seeking solace in the living room and the glow of the tube. Marie trailed after him, wine in hand, plopping down beside him on the couch. Her gaze bore into him, making him wish he'd fled to his office instead. "Everything cool, Brad?" she piped up during a commercial break, her tone sugary sweet. Brad's stomach did a somersault. She was onto him. He fought to keep his composure, plastering on a smile. "I'm peachy," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "You seem a tad wound up today." She gave his arm a gentle rub. "Something on your mind from work, honey?" Brad's throat tightened. "Nah, all good," he managed to croak out. "Really, let's drop it there." But the dam of words threatened to burst. "Why ask me that?" he blurted out, eyes fixed on the TV screen. "I don't know, I don't know." She sidled closer, her touch affectionate. "Maybe we need some us time. It's been a while, you know," she teased, a nervous giggle bubbling up. "Really?" Brad choked out. "Yeah," she giggled back. "I miss you, honey. Starting to think maybe you're not into me anymore, Brad," she quipped, trying to play it off. Decades together and they knew each other like the back of their hands. But in that moment, the laughter felt hollow, forced. Brad's chuckle sounded like a record scratch in the silence. "You?" he stammered out. "Oh, no, I am." They both chuckled nervously, but the tension hung thick in the air, suffocating any genuine mirth. She focused on the TV again, and they both sat quietly. Before, she used to hint about wanting Zex often, but she usually said no when he asked. He didn't think too much about it. Sometimes she would make a move, and he never said no. Her hints were subtle, like smiling at the right time or touching suggestively. Sometimes, just a playful kiss as she sat on his lap would make him follow her to the bedroom eagerly. It used to be so simple, but now he knew she was being intimate with other guys. He used to be eager, almost desperate to be with her intimately. Now, he held back. Since she rarely offered, the lack of intimacy wasn't obvious. But after weeks without it, even Marie was starting to see that their bed life was non-existent. They were more like roommates than lovers now, and she was beginning to realize that. Brad worried he wouldn't be able to resist much longer. They hadn't been intimate in weeks, and knowing what she was doing made him extremely aroused. She was very passionate with her lover, but she had never been so forward with him. In the past, it took her a while to get in the mood, but when she did, he couldn't resist her charm. Now, with her new appearance and experiences, she could be very tempting. He was almost finished with his plans, thankfully. Despite her suggestive behavior tonight, Brad was determined to wait. He didn't want to compete with her new lover. He was certain any intimacy between them would leave her unsatisfied. After seeing her intense reaction to the other guy's body, he knew she had never acted like that with him before. Over the past month, he had resolved not to respond to her advances. Whenever she made a suggestive remark, he acted as though he hadn't heard. In bed, he maintained a distance between them and feigned immediate sleep. Yet he was aware that he couldn't continue to ignore her indefinitely. They once enjoyed a satisfactory, albeit sporadic, sexual relationship. He had believed in their compatibility until a video revealed her uninhibited side, shaking his confidence in his ability to please her. He suspected her expressions of love and pleasure were feigned, not wanting to disappoint her by failing in his attempts. She never exhibited the same intensity with him as she did with Pitt Fort, and he was convinced she never would. Beside him, Marie sighed and hinted, "Thought you might want to head to bed early tonight?" "Are you tired?" he inquired. She giggled and playfully slapped his arm. "I'm not. How about we go to bed now? Maybe, you know?" "Yeah, I know," he responded, his skin flushing and sweat forming. He could feel her gaze, puzzled by his lack of enthusiasm towards her clear proposition. "Maybe later," he stated calmly. "You go ahead. I'd like to watch this show a bit longer." She sighed in disappointment, and he sensed her warmth beside him, the scent of her blonde hair and spicy perfume enticing him. He tried to suppress his desire and avoided her bewildered look. Despite his efforts to quell his longing, his love for her made it an impossible task. She returned her attention to the TV, baffled by his hesitance. Her pride was wounded by his rejection. Brad resolved to let her experience rejection for once. Even as Marie yawned loudly and stretched in a manner that accentuated her figure, aiming to capture his attention, he remained fixated on the television. When his lack of reaction to her flirtations was apparent, Marie sighed. "Guess I'm tired, honey. I'm heading to bed now. Care to join?" It was an offer he hadn't encountered in years. "I'll be up soon," he replied nonchalantly. "Just wake me when you come up." "I might not fall asleep right away," she hinted. "Okay, see you soon," she said, giving him a prolonged look before departing for the bedroom. Brad felt a sense of relief as he stayed in the living room for another 3 hours. It was past 1 when he finally entered the bedroom to ensure she was asleep before he joined her. Sleep eluded him, and he awoke early, still fatigued. He quietly left the bed, dressed in the guest room to avoid disturbing her, clinging to his pride. He refused to be intimate with her amidst her infidelity. He longed for the days when closeness with his wife was uncomplicated. However, since she initiated this situation, he would not pretend everything was normal or reward her behavior. If she desired sexual intimacy so desperately, she could seek out her lover. Her betrayal was her choice, and it was no longer his responsibility to ensure her happiness. The atmosphere at home became increasingly tense. Marie was perplexed, wondering if there was a problem, as their communication had dwindled and affection was scarce. He occasionally spoke during dinner, but never initiated physical contact. When she embraced him, he became rigid. Sometimes he even flinched at her touch. Clearly, something was troubling him, but he remained silent on the issue. She attempted to engage him in conversation, but he either diverted the topic or evaded her concerns altogether. The loving connection they once shared through actions and words had evidently dissipated, making dialogue with him more challenging than ever before. The following night, Marie tried to seduce him again. Just like before, he seemed uninterested. She wondered if he knew about her affair, but dismissed the idea quickly because she and Oscar had been discreet. Only their close friends knew they even knew each other. They acted friendly during workouts to avoid suspicion, but kept things proper. Any physical contact they had was away from the spa and people they knew. The sexual pleasure she got from her younger lover was saved for their visits to her father's old cabin. Marie was worried about Brad's behavior, but not too much. She still loved him and wanted to be supportive if he had a problem. She never thought whatever was wrong would endanger their marriage. She figured it must be a work issue, something that happened occasionally. She was disappointed they hadn't been intimate for so long. She believed he must be getting aroused, but that wasn't her fault. She had offered herself more in the past month than in years, and she wasn't even aroused. Still, she didn't want Brad to feel ignored, and wondered why he didn't want her anymore. Was he not attracted to her anymore? That didn't seem possible. She was in better shape than she had been for years. He was getting older. Maybe he's already losing his interest in Zex. It was funny how Brad seemed less interested in Zex, while her own desires were growing. Lately, she was catching the eye of younger guys everywhere. Her improved figure didn't go unnoticed by the men at her workplace. Being around college guys all day, Marie was regularly approached. So many guys were interested in her that she had to be careful not to encourage them and maintain a professional distance. With her secret lover, she satisfied her cravings, but still wanted her husband to be happy. Their bed life had never been very exciting, so she wasn't too worried that he was distant. She would continue being the loving wife to Brad and save her intense sexual desires for her young lover. Marie knew her affair would cool off eventually, but for now, it was still passionate. Whenever possible, she'd meet Oscar at the cabin for a couple of hours of thrilling sex. Then she'd clean up and return to her usual, albeit somewhat monotonous life with her unsuspecting husband. After their trysts, she made sure to clean everything thoroughly to avoid any suspicion if Brad ever visited the cabin. They never used the bed for sex, opting for other places that were easier to clean. Despite Brad's odd behavior, she wasn't willing to give up her affair. As the next week passed, Brad's indifferent attitude bothered her. She wondered if he suspected something was amiss and decided to take a break from her affair, at least until her husband returned to normal. She informed Oscar they should take a break, and he felt disappointed. He believed she was worrying over nothing, but agreed. By the second week of their break, she struggled to keep her mind off Zex. She constantly daydreamed about the cabin and yearned for Oscar's passionate lovemaking. She didn't want to get involved with anyone else, but working at a college meant being around many attractive men. She found herself fantasizing about colleagues and feeling susceptible to any attention from handsome guys. Before her affair, Marie hardly noticed her male coworkers, as she wasn't very physically inclined and didn't prioritize Zex much. However, since starting the affair and experiencing regular passionate encounters with a young lover, she found she couldn't do without it anymore. When her desires became overwhelming, she decided to end her celibacy. During her weekly workout, she informed Oscar she was available again, expressing her desire to restart their affair, and he agreed. They maintained a respectable distance from each other that day, pretending everything was normal. As he walked her to her car, they made plans to meet the following week to resume their relationship. Brad mentioned a business meeting that day, giving her a few precious hours to sneak away. Marie returned home feeling rejuvenated and spent the evening with her husband. Dinner was quiet again, and although Brad seemed more somber than usual, she brushed off any concerns. He had been distant for weeks, showing no interest in a physical relationship. But with the anticipation of passionate encounters next week, she pushed aside her frustrations. As Brad moped around the house, avoiding her, Marie gave him space and tried to maintain a friendly atmosphere between them. Her cheerful mood continued at work on Friday. Even her boss noticed and asked why she was so happy. "Oh, nothing special," Marie replied with a smile. "Things have just been going well for me lately. I'm happy with how my life is going." "Did Brad get a promotion, or did you win the lottery?" her supervisor joked. "Maybe you're having a second honeymoon." "Nothing like that," Marie chuckled. "I'm just grateful for my home life. Brad has been wonderful, and I appreciate everything I have. Things aren't perfect, but they could be a lot worse." "That's a great attitude. I wish everyone thought like that, Marie," her boss remarked. After work, Marie went home feeling elated. She couldn't wait for her upcoming meeting with her lover. Feeling extremely aroused, she wanted to take a shower as soon as she got home to cool down. When she entered the kitchen, she was delighted to find Brad had already prepared dinner. She hugged him tightly, surprised when he hugged her back and kissed her cheek. "This is wonderful, Brad," she exclaimed, admiring the meal. "Would you like some wine with dinner, honey?" he asked. "Yes, I'd love a glass," she replied suggestively. "But I don't want to get too sleepy because I want to reward you later for making such a delicious meal." "Your smile is reward enough for me, darling," Brad said. "Oh no," Marie giggled. "I'm going to give you something much better than a smile tonight. It's been too long since we've been together, and I want to show my wonderful husband how much I love him." Brad smiled back and said, "I think you're wonderful too." They ate and chatted normally for a change. Marie was glad to see Brad opening up. After cleaning up together, they went to the living room to watch TV, their usual routine. But tonight, with Marie's upbeat attitude, she was determined to seduce her husband. It had been weeks since they had any physical contact, and she missed it. Despite his age, Brad remained an attractive, healthy man, undoubtedly with unmet sexual needs. Even though she had a lover on the side, she was still eager to fulfill her husband's desires, determined to do so tonight. Thankfully, he seemed to be in a better mood than usual. During a commercial break, she touched Brad's arm and excused herself, heading to the bedroom to change into more revealing clothing. She knew he liked her in skimpy attire, so she opted for a thin tank top and tight shorts from the dresser. Feeling daring, she decided to skip wearing a bra, knowing the tiny top and bikini panties would surely arouse even her indifferent husband. As she admired her reflection in the mirror, she couldn't help but smile at how alluring she appeared, proving that even at her age, she still looked attractive. Confident that Brad would be unable to resist her, she eagerly made her way back to the living room to seduce him. Upon her return, she found Brad in the kitchen, so she sat on the sofa, assuming a seductive pose, and waited. When he joined her with a beer and another glass of wine, she flashed him a sultry smile and patted the seat beside her. His eyebrows rose at the sight of her outfit, and she could feel the tension building between them as he took his seat. "I filled your glass," he told her, handing her the drink. "I hope you wanted more." "Yes, I'm definitely in the mood for more," she replied, dropping hints as subtly as she could. "I'm in the mood for something else too, darling," he remarked. "I can see," she replied with amusement, knowing she looked alluring and available. Although she rarely felt this attracted to her husband, tonight was an exception. She couldn't help but wonder how her lover would react to seeing her like this. However, she was careful not to appear too needy and let Brad make the first move, as it was important to maintain her ego. So she sat close to him, making sure he noticed her, signaling her readiness, hoping he'd initiate. But he remained fixated on the TV. Eventually, she inched nearer, sipping her wine and attempting to cuddle up to him. She even rested her head on his shoulder and gently rubbed his arm, expecting him to respond. But he still didn't look at her. As the next show started, she began to feel tired and frustrated with his indifference. Despite feeling drowsy from the wine, she didn't realize Brad had slipped a sleeping pill into her drink. Soon enough, she drifted off on the sofa, only to wake up later in the dark, covered with a blanket, with Brad nowhere to be seen. Confused and half asleep, she mumbled to herself, noticing it was 4 in the morning. Without changing, she crawled into bed next to him, feeling exhausted and annoyed. The next day, she felt resentful about his lack of attention, thinking he missed out on an opportunity for intimacy. She got up late, realizing it was nearly noon, and found Brad in the kitchen. "Morning, honey," he greeted her cheerfully. "Want some coffee?" "Yeah, sure," she replied flatly. "What happened last night?" "You fell asleep," he explained with a smile. "I figured you had a tough week and were tired. You looked so peaceful, I didn't want to wake you." "You should have woken me," she said, slightly irritated. "I know," he replied vaguely. "By the way, Marie, how about we go away for the weekend?" "Go away?" she echoed, still groggy and confused. "Yeah, let's go to the cabin for a couple of days," he suggested with a grin. "We've both been working hard lately and haven't spent much time together." Marie tried to clear her head as she sipped her coffee. "The cabin? We haven't been there in years." "I know, but we could use some time together, you know?" Brad persisted. "It's so peaceful there, I bet we can reconnect and have some fun." "Fun?" she repeated, still trying to wake up fully. Marie's mind cleared as her eyes suddenly opened. Was he suggesting they have sex? After leaving her hanging last night, she wasn't expecting this. "Fun, huh?" she asked. "Yeah," Brad chuckled. "I know I'm not that romantic, but maybe if we break from our usual routine, something might click. It's just for the weekend since we both have work on Monday, but it could be fun. What do you think?" Marie shrugged. "I guess so. We need to go to the store and get some things." "I already got everything yesterday," Brad said. "Well, aren't you prepared?" Marie teased. "Yeah, always prepared," he laughed. "I think we should clean up, get dressed, and head out. Let's start our weekend right now." As Marie thought about it, she grew more anxious. Why not? A weekend away with her husband might help their relationship. The way he was talking, she might even get to seduce him. "Okay, let me change and pack a bag," she said. "Great," Brad exclaimed eagerly. "I already have my stuff packed. I'll put it in the car and we can leave shortly." On the way to the cabin, Marie tried to use her cell phone, but found it wasn't working. "Oh, darn it," she said, punching buttons on the phone. "I thought it was charged up, but I guess the battery is dead." "That's okay, sweetheart," Brad reassured her. "You can use mine if you want." "No, it's okay. It's nothing important. I'll just wait until we get to the cabin and charge it up." An hour and a half later, they arrived at the cabin, put the food in the fridge, and made sandwiches. Marie felt happy, but a little apprehensive. As she looked around the small cabin, she searched for any signs of her affair. But as they settled in, she didn't see anything unusual, and Brad didn't notice anything either. After finishing their food, they took a walk around the lake, talking, laughing, and enjoying the beautiful surroundings. Brad held her hand, pointing out things he wanted her to see. He even hugged her a couple of times and caught her when she tripped. He was friendlier than he had been in months, and Marie was thrilled. It felt so good that she almost felt guilty knowing she would be cheating on him in this very place in a few days. The afternoon was great, and the evening was even better. Marie hadn't felt this close to her husband in a long while. Once they returned to the cabin, she took a risk and kissed him. He welcomed her affection. When it got dark, Brad played some music, and they opened a bottle of wine. As they drank, he shared funny stories from their past years of marriage. Marie, feeling a bit tipsy, tried to encourage him to hold her. When he wrapped his arms around her slim body, she felt anticipation building within her. The romantic ambiance persisted when they went to bed. Unlike at home, they lay side by side tonight, tenderly kissing and caressing each other. Marie was eager for her husband to make love to her finally. "It's been so long, please, honey," she whispered, parting her legs invitingly. "Don't tease me anymore. I'm yours. Go ahead and take me. I'm so ready," she urged. "You are," he teased back. "God, yes, I could scream. Can't you tell?" She tried to focus on her husband, but she couldn't help comparing the slow, intimate lovemaking with her lover's passionate encounters. Both were thrilling, but what she was experiencing now felt more fulfilling. Brad's love for her was evident in everything he said and did, including their intimate moment together. However, Oscar simply desired Zex. There was no love involved between them, and she knew it. He only wanted Zex. During their time together, he treated her like a mindless blow-up doll. While she enjoyed the attention, she would never trade it for what she was experiencing now. Unsure of the time, she heard a noise outside. It seemed early for them to go to bed, but without TV to watch, it felt appropriate to turn in early. Another suspicious noise caught their attention, making her and Brad alert. "What's that?" Brad whispered with alarm. "Is someone outside?" "I don't know," she whispered back. Another noise, possibly on the porch, made Marie sit up, suddenly afraid. "What should we do?" she whispered. Brad pushed the covers back and quietly got out of bed. "You stay here," he told her firmly. "I'll go check it out." As Brad moved to his bag and took something out, the doorknob rattled, sending Marie into a panic. Before she could see what Brad was doing, the front door swung open, revealing a dark figure. Marie realized it must be a home invasion and screamed in terror. In a flash, the room erupted into chaos. A deafening bang pierced the air, followed by another. Marie's world spun as she realized her old man had popped a cap in the intruder. From the safety of the bedroom, she heard the thud of the man hitting the ground, clawing at his neck where the bullet found its mark. Another scream clawed its way out of her throat, disbelief gripping her like a vice. "Oh my God!" she wailed, hands flying to her face as she crumpled. Brad, cool as a cucumber, edged toward the downed assailant, gun steady in his grip. With a cautious touch, he checked for signs of life, then ventured outside to ensure they were in the clear. Returning to flick on the lights, he unknowingly flipped the switch on Marie's nightmare. Her brain reeled, eyes widening in horror as she beheld the lifeless figure on the floor. Oscar. Sobbing uncontrollably, she was barely coherent when Brad approached, pulling her close, murmuring reassurances. "It's all over, honey," he whispered, his voice a lifeline amidst the chaos. "We're safe, Marie." Her thoughts tumbled in disarray as Brad comforted her. Eventually, he spoke again, his tone grave. "We gotta call the cops," he said, his words hanging heavy in the air. "They'll want to snoop around, treat this like a damn crime scene. Just stay put." Marie collapsed onto the bed, tears flowing freely. Brad watched her grimly, waiting until she stumbled to the bathroom, overcome with nausea. Seizing the opportunity, he snagged her cell, deftly disabling it before slipping it back into her purse. Turning to the body, he plucked an envelope from the dead man's jacket, containing a note. With a bitter scowl, Brad read the words he'd penned at a library miles away, then planted on Oscar's car earlier that day. "This Zex coupon is valid for tonight only. Please bring it and redeem it for an evening of intense Zex. I apologize for the short notice, but I just found out he's away this weekend. Can you meet me at the cabin, lover? I hope so, and I'll make it worth your while. Signed, your faithful partner." He crumpled the note and went outside. Her lover's car was parked in the driveway. The cabin was in a dead zone, making it difficult to get a good cell phone signal. He called his wife. "I'll be right back, Marie. I'm trying to call the cops, but I'm having trouble getting a signal. Let me go out back and see if I can get through." He hurried to the lake, to a spot hidden by shrubs, and lit the note and envelope on fire with a lighter. He watched them turn to ashes, ensuring there was no evidence left. Then he rubbed the black ashes between two rocks and covered them with leaves, erasing all traces of his deceitful plan. He took a moment to calm his emotions. He had never killed anyone before. He knew what would happen when he placed the note on Pitfort's car this morning. However, committing murder was emotional. He regretted ending the guy's life like this, but with the rage he had harbored for so long, he knew it was inevitable. His hands were still trembling as he made the 911 call to the police. Now, it was up to him to keep his nerves steady and let the situation unfold. He had already taken down all the surveillance cameras and hidden the videos in a place where nobody would ever find them. It was fortunate that he kept his knowledge of her affair to himself. Once the cops started questioning his wife, everything would come out. Even if she didn't confess, it wouldn't take long for the police to discover she was a member of the health spa where he worked, linking her to her lover. The police arrived in less than an hour. Brad was waiting for them and admitted to shooting him. They confiscated his gun and bagged it as evidence. When asked, he assured them that he hadn't moved or touched the body since the shots were fired. His wife corroborated the same story. The cops became immediately suspicious when they learned the intruder used a key to open the door. How did he know it was there? Brad explained about the key but claimed ignorance. However, when they questioned Marie, she broke down almost immediately. She confessed that she and Pitfort had been there before. Brad pretended to be shocked, and his acting seemed convincing as the cops exchanged suspicious glances. Both were taken to the station for questioning. The forensic team arrived soon after and meticulously examined the cabin. At the station, Brad contacted a lawyer he had used before. Following the lawyer's instructions, he refused to say anything further until the lawyer arrived. On the other hand, Marie spilled everything. She was devastated by her lover's death and bewildered by how it had happened, losing all control. The cops capitalized on her vulnerability to extract details about her affair spanning months. Brad didn't mind her confession. She was unaware of his ambush and couldn't disclose anything incriminating. After spending a long night and part of the next day in custody, both husband and wife were released, but instructed not to leave town. Despite weeks of questioning and investigations, no incriminating evidence was found regarding the shooting. Brad sensed their suspicion, but lacking evidence, they had to classify the shooting as justified homicide. Breaking into someone's home in the middle of the night was undoubtedly a crime, and any jury would likely side with the homeowner. Although there were lingering questions, the jury would likely give the homeowner the benefit of the doubt. Brad took his wife home on Sunday. She was distraught and kept apologizing for cheating until he finally told her to stop. He already knew about everything and maintained a confused look as she confessed all the details. He regretted having to end the young man's life, but saw no other way to get rid of him and restore his pride. Returning to work on Monday, he left his wife to deal with her own issues. She was a wreck when he returned home. A neighbor was there to support her, preventing her from losing her composure. That evening, after a brief dinner, he confronted her about the affair. She cried throughout, offering the typical excuses and pleas for forgiveness. Her excuses fell on deaf ears, and he served her with divorce papers on Thursday at home. She hadn't returned to work and nearly collapsed upon receiving the divorce papers, having lost both her husband and lover in the same week. Brad, concerned for her well-being, took her to the emergency room as she cried uncontrollably, packing a suitcase for her. She pleaded with him to stay and forgive her, asking, "What am I going to do now?" With little sympathy, he responded, "I don't know. We're getting divorced, Marie. You're no longer my concern." Despite her declaration of love, Brad callously retorted, "Just go find another lover, Marie. You seem to have no trouble finding them. Just make sure he's as well endowed as the one you were involved with." His harsh words left her inconsolably sobbing as he departed, never to return to the home. Though Brad was never charged with a crime, authorities kept a close eye on him, questioning acquaintances about the homicide. The suspicion cast a shadow over his career, leading him to eventually leave his job. However, he soon found another position and managed to stay afloat financially. They sold their house and cabin, splitting the proceeds. Brad received half of the marital assets and kept additional funds hidden from Marie. With her lawyer investigating their finances, he had to maintain a lower standard of living and remain vigilant for anything incriminating. Despite the shooting and divorce, Brad carried on with life. He started an exercise routine at home, improving his physique and losing weight. He stayed in touch with his daughter, who hoped for reconciliation, but he firmly declined. Despite insecurities about his attractiveness, Brad began dating older women, finding companionship and enjoyment in their company. It took some time, but he eventually built up the courage to ask someone out, finding solace in socializing and reconnecting with female company. He wasn't ready for another long-term relationship yet. With a successful career and many good years ahead at 55, he still attracted female attention. In the months following his divorce, he found himself less lonely than expected. While he adjusted to normal life gradually, Marie spiraled into depression, struggling to overcome the shock of the events. Her once carefree attitude toward sex, life, and love vanished. Despite her lingering love for her husband, who divorced her, and the loss of her younger lover, she couldn't regain control of her emotions to seek companionship. The vibrant bed life she once enjoyed disappeared after the divorce and seemed irretrievable. Regular therapy sessions and medication helped her cope with her mental health struggles, while her declining physical health led her daughter to arrange medical care. She stopped exercising and gained weight, becoming increasingly reclusive and abandoning the spa that initiated her troubles. Brad learned from friends that she planned to move out of state to escape the harsh gossip surrounding her affair.